Kirk, I guess you've known Coach D'Antoni for a long time, but what he's done throughout the last 4 years, at least 11 wins. Talk about the job that he's done and eventually getting Michigan State back to the Rose Bowl and into a BCS game for the first time.
It's just incredible. I mean, I've lived in the Big Ten area for a number of years and like to think I know about a lot of the programs. And I just have always felt that Michigan State over the last 20 or 30 years has had some talent, had some great years. But I think where they've gotten into trouble is they've just lacked that focus and that intensity and just the overall commitment that it really takes to be a great program. Not a great year, but a great program with consistency. And Dino's come in and right away had to deal with some issues. And pretty much to me, kind of drew a line in the sand and said, you're either with us or against us. And if you're with us, this is how we're going to do things. We're going to class, we're going to be committed, we're going to sacrifice, and we're going to come together as a group. So it's not to me that they're just at the Rose Bowl or all the success. It's how he's done it that to me really separates himself from so many other coaches out there.
And actually, Kirk, do you think finally now with that BCS appearance, he'll start maybe getting the attention and credit that he deserves?
I think the opportunity is there. I think the one thing that people still wait to see from the Big Ten, not just Michigan State, is how do they do on a big stage. So I think what Michigan State has done is they've gotten themselves an opportunity to really gain a lot of national recognition for the conference, but specifically for them, because Michigan State, this is new for them, getting to this kind of game and having this kind of opportunity. But beating Ohio State was great. But a lot more people are going to recognize where Michigan State's program is, if not just by getting to the Rose Bowl, but by winning it.
Over the last few years, Mark D'Antonio and Pat Narduzzi have really established an elite defense. There are very few that have done what they've done on a consistent basis. What makes this defense so consistent?
I think that the thing that I've always been amazed by, the great defenses in college football, is they lose players and they replace them with first-year guys, and they still maintain a certain level. And I think that's where Michigan State's program has gotten defensively. Dino's obviously has a great reputation, but I think Pat Narduzzi, now we're starting to really see these last 3 or 4 years. A lot of us already knew this about him, but now we're starting to see him get the attention that he deserves, because I think it comes down to a mentality. They have bought into a kind of an aggressive mentality where they pin their ears back and they bully you. And you have got to be able to beat their corners in man coverage. And if you can't beat those corners in man coverage, you have no chance of moving the football unless you have a quarterback that can run around and make plays. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult. So I think it's a mentality, and I think it's a confidence and understanding of the system. They have such continuity on the defensive side where these guys just, it's almost like a hand signal, and right away they're in position. So all of that kind of ties in to them being one of the best defenses in the country.
You addressed one of the things that Pat Narduzzi always talks about, the fact you can play pressure because of the cornerback play, and obviously Darqueze Dennard, a special player that Jim Harbaugh will win. Talk about what you see from Darqueze Dennard.
Well, Darqueze, to me, last year was one of the better corners in the country, and this year I think really took it to a whole different level. What's amazing is now that he's gotten so much attention, when you really start to hear about where he started, it's incredible to think, that he started, in a rural community in Georgia, not heavily recruited, ends up coming in with a chip on his shoulder, buys into the system, gets bigger and stronger, always had that speed, and now all of a sudden he's become a guy that receivers fear. And he's in a system that they basically just say, it's, Revis's Island. You're out there by yourself, get physical, do whatever you can do. And, both their corners do such a great job. I think if there's one thing that this defense has got to be able to continue to do, it's continue this tradition of finding corners that are willing and able and capable of holding up in man-to-man and pressure, because you don't see it in college football. You don't see defenses that are willing to leave their corners literally almost on every snap on an island, and the other 9 guys are involved in stopping the run and play action pass. So if they can maintain that with guys like Darqueze, obviously they'll maintain the level that they've been able to play.
Connor Cook, 11-1 as a starter. What progress have you seen him make throughout the season?
I think, like a lot of quarterbacks, the more reps you get, the more the game starts to slow down. Some success that you have allows you to kind of come into that huddle and feel good about who you are. But in studying him, I really think he maybe gained more by losing and by not getting a chance late in the Notre Dame game to be the guy to be able to lead them to a victory. They took him out and put Andrew in. How he handled that, to me, is why he's been able to enjoy the successes that he's had. I mean, think about where this offense was in September, where they were struggling to complete passes against teams like South Florida and Western Michigan. And to think that he's a game MVP in a Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis, that's not just his physical ability, that's a lot of work with him studying film, getting those reps to be able to, as I said, get the game to slow down. And the other thing is, the guys around him, clearly there's something going on in the locker room. They believe in him, and I think it shows in the fact that they continue to believe in him when he went through through those tough times.
Early in the season, it was almost kind of a running back by committee approach, but a
Yeah.
guy who also has emerged down the stretch here has been Jeremy Langford. What do you see from him at tailback?
I think the thing that initially I saw was quickness. You know, he had an acceleration that is special. But as the year went on, the more I watched him, the more I was impressed with how physical he can be for a little guy. I mean, most of his yards, I think half of his yards, come after contact. I mean, you don't see that from smaller backs like that. So that shows that if you don't get, you know, your shoulders and you square up on him, you're going to use an arm tackle to bring him down. He's going to be able to shake through that and pick up big yards. And I think the whole thing is such an interesting story where you have an offense that was just trying to create an identity, and they didn't have a proven quarterback, and they didn't have a proven tailback, and they had receivers dropping the ball a year ago, and they're dropping the ball early this year. It's just amazing to think that they're in Pasadena playing the granddaddy of them all, and it has everything to do with the quarterback got in place. Jeremy Langford came alive and had those big 8 games in a row, and the receivers also became more confident. So I think it all really tied in together.
Analyst Kirk, from Michigan State's perspective, what are a couple of keys to the game against Stanford for Michigan State to come out with the win?
Well, I think the first thing you have to understand is Stanford comes in with a very similar mentality that Michigan State has. I mean, both of these teams pride themselves on basically having a mentality where we're going to impose our will on you on both sides of the football. It's like looking into a mirror. So understand that the team you're facing is not just talking about it. They legitimately will have the exact same approach that you have on both sides of the ball. So who's willing to win that battle? Because it's good against good, attitude against attitude. And then I think the difference is, the X factor is, who's willing to maybe get outside of the box and maybe have a little bit of success offensively doing something that breaks a tendency. You know, maybe it's Connor running speed option. Maybe it's Connor play action on 1st and 10, making a big play. They've got to do some things that are a little bit maybe not as obvious that they've been able to get away with in the Big Ten, because Stanford is one of the best front sevens in the country. They understand, very similar to Michigan State, where to line up, what their assignments are, how to disguise things, how to be a decoy when you need to be. So it's good. I think at the end of the day, Michigan State wins if Connor plays well and he makes some plays with the pass game on early downs. I think that'll be a big key for them, leading them to a successful Rose Bowl.